The cafe windows were misted with rain, and outside the streets of Portland shimmered under dull gray light. Inside, the air smelled of coffee and quiet tension. Emily sat at the small wooden table, her fingers wrapped around a mug that had gone cold. Across from her sat Ryan, the man she had once loved so deeply she thought she'd never breathe again without him. It had been nearly a year since they'd seen each other, but in that moment, it felt like no time had passed at all. When she called him that morning, she hadn't expected him to answer. Her message had been short, almost careless. "Can we talk?" But her heart had raced the second she pressed send. She waited hours, convincing herself he wouldn't reply. Then he did. Just one word, okay? And now, here they were, sitting across from each other in the same cafe where they used to come every Sunday morning, pretending to read while stealing glances and laughing about nothing. But today, there was no laughter. Only silence that carried the weight of everything unsaid. Ryan looked different. Not drastically, just older in a way that comes from learning hard lessons. His dark hair was a little shorter, his beard a little thicker. The easy smile that used to come so naturally was gone. Emily wondered if she had caused that. Maybe she had. He looked at her once briefly, then back at the window. "It's been a while," he said finally. "Yeah," she replied softly. "It has." That was all. Just two words that tried to fill the distance between them. But the distance was too wide now. Emily's mind spun with everything she wanted to say, how she missed him, how she regretted leaving, how not a single day passed when she didn't think about what went wrong. But she stayed quiet, afraid to break whatever fragile peace existed between them. She noticed he was still drinking black coffee. It's the same way he always did, even though he never really liked it. She remembered teasing him about it once, saying he only drank it because it made him look serious. Now, she realized he had become that serious man she joked about, someone quieter, steadier, but somehow lonelier too. A soft song played in the background, a tune that almost sounded familiar. Emily looked down, blinking fast. She didn't come here to cry. She came because she needed closure. That's what she told herself, at least. But deep down, she knew it wasn't closure she wanted. It was connection. Even if it hurt. Ryan shifted in his seat, his gaze finally meeting hers. So he said, "Why now, Emily?" She hesitated. She could lie, say she just wanted to check in to see how he was doing. But what was the point? He could always tell when she was lying. He always had. "I guess I just wanted to see you," she said honestly. "To see if you're okay." His expression didn't change. "I'm fine," he said quietly, but the edge in his tone said otherwise. She nodded, pretending to believe him. "That's good." The rain grew heavier outside, tapping softly against the glass. Emily looked out the window, watching people rush by with umbrellas, their faces hidden by hoods and scarves. Life kept moving, but she felt stuck, caught between what was and what might have been. Ryan leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. "You seem different," he said after a pause. "Do I?" she asked, her voice light but unsure. "Yeah, quieter, or maybe just tired." She smiled faintly. "Maybe both." He nodded, and for a moment they just looked at each other, two people who had shared so much but now could barely find the right words. The silence wasn't empty, though. It was filled with everything that still lived between them. The laughter, the arguments, the late nights. The love that had never really gone away. Emily reached for a napkin on the table, her hand brushing his by accident. The touch was brief, but it sent a small, warm current through her chest. She pulled her hand back quickly, but it was too late. The moment had already happened, and they both felt it. Ryan's eyes softened, but he didn't speak. Emily wanted to. She wanted to say that she missed him, that she thought about calling him 100 times before she actually did. That every time she passed this cafe, she wondered if he still came here. But she said nothing. Instead, she looked at him, really looked, and saw the same man she once loved with her whole heart. The one who used to hold her hand while crossing the street. Who made her laugh until she couldn't breathe. Who listened to her dreams like they were his own. And in that moment, she realized something that made her chest ache. She still loved him. Not in the same way as before, not with wild hope or endless plans, but with quiet, steady truth. Ryan cleared his throat. "So, how's work?" he asked, trying to break the tension. "It's fine," she said. "Busy." He nodded. "Good, that's good." They were both pretending again. Pretending this was just another casual catch-up, that their hearts weren't still tangled in the past. Emily looked down, tracing her finger along the rim of her coffee cup. "Do you ever think about—" She stopped herself before finishing. Ryan tilted his head. "About what?" "About us," she said softly. He didn't answer right away. He just looked at her with those steady, unreadable eyes. Then he said, almost under his breath, "Every day." The words landed between them like a confession. Emily felt her throat tighten. She wanted to reach across the table to take his hand and say she did too. But she couldn't. Not yet. The door to the cafe opened, letting in a cold gust of air. A few people came in, laughing, shaking off umbrellas. The sound broke the spell for a moment, pulling them both back into the real world. Emily sat back, her heart pounding. She didn't know what would happen next, if this meeting would bring them closure or reopen old wounds. But for the first time in months, she felt something alive inside her again. Ryan looked down at his coffee, then back at her. "You look good," he said simply. She smiled faintly. "So do you." It wasn't much, but it was enough. A small crack in the wall they had built around themselves. The rain outside kept falling, steady and calm, like the world was reminding them that some storms don't destroy everything. They just change the way things grow. After Emily took a deep breath, her heart full of questions she wasn't ready to ask yet. But she knew one thing for sure: this wasn't over. Not yet, because sometimes the hardest part of love isn't letting go. It's finding the courage to face what's still left when you finally stop pretending everything's fine. The rain had slowed to a quiet drizzle, streaking the cafe windows like faint brushstrokes. Inside, the air felt heavy, almost too still. Emily sat across from Ryan, watching the way his eyes drifted toward the door. Like he was thinking of leaving, but couldn't quite do it yet. She knew that look. It was the same one he gave her the night she walked out of his apartment for the last time. "So," he said, voice steady but distant, "why now, Emily? After all this time?" She looked down at her hands, fingers twisting together. "Because I can't stop thinking about how it ended," she said honestly. "I thought I was doing the right thing by walking away, but it never stopped feeling wrong." He leaned back, folding his arms. "You said you needed space. I gave you that. I know." Her voice softened. "And I thought space would help me breathe again. But it just made me realize how empty everything felt without you." Ryan sighed quietly, shaking his head. "You can't just come back after a year and expect things to be the same." "I don't," she said quickly. "I just needed to see you, to talk, to tell you that I'm sorry." He looked at her then, really looked, his expression unreadable. "You think an apology fixes everything?" "No," she whispered. "But it's a start." The waitress came by with a refill, placing the coffee pot between them. Emily reached for it first, leaning across the table to pour. Her sleeve brushed his hand, and the simple contact made her heart stutter. She froze for a second, then carefully set the pot down. The silence stretched again, but this time it felt different, charged, uneasy, alive. Ryan's eyes followed her hand as she pulled back. "You're still pretending?" he said quietly. Her brows furrowed. "Pretending that this doesn't matter to you," he said. "That you're just here to talk. You've always done that, acted like you're fine when you're not." Emily's chest tightened. "You think I don't care? I came here because I still do." He looked away, jaw tense. "Then why did you leave?" She hesitated, her throat thick. "Because I didn't know who I was anymore. Everything I did revolved around us, your plans, your goals. I lost myself somewhere in the middle." He nodded slowly, his voice low. "I didn't realize you felt that way." "I didn't either," she admitted. "Not until it was too late." Ryan leaned forward, elbows on the table. "You could have told me. We could have figured it out." "I was scared," she said. "Scared that staying would mean giving up who I was." and scared that leaving meant giving up. You. For a moment, neither spoke. The sound of the rain filled the space between them again. It was softer now, almost comforting, but it couldn't wash away what still lingered. He rubbed the back of his neck. A familiar gesture she hadn't seen in months. You know, after you left, I tried to forget. I kept telling myself it was for the best. But every time I passed this cafe, I thought about you sitting right there, drinking your tea, pretending to read. Her lips curved into a faint smile. I wasn't pretending. Yes, you were, he said, half smiling now. You always used to stare out the window like you were somewhere else. Maybe I was, she said softly, but it was never far from you. Ryan let out a breath that sounded almost like a laugh, but not quite. You always did know how to make things complicated. I didn't mean to, she said. I just didn't know how to stop missing you. His eyes softened. You think I stopped? Emily looked at him in surprise, her heart catching in her throat. He leaned forward slightly, his voice quieter now, steadier. I tried, Emily. I really did. But no matter how much I told myself to move on, it never worked. She blinked back tears. Then why do you sound so angry? Because you left me without a reason that made sense, he said. And I spent months trying to understand something I'll never get. I didn't want to hurt you, she whispered. But you did, he said, his tone gentle but firm. And maybe that's what makes this so hard. Because even after everything, I still want you to be okay. Her eyes glistened. You still care? Of course I do, he said. You don't stop caring just because it hurts. The words sank into her like rain on dry soil. She didn't know what to say, so she just nodded, her throat tight. Outside, a bus passed. Splashing through puddles, the sound echoing faintly through the glass. Inside, it felt like time had slowed. Ryan picked up his mug, took a sip, and set it down again. So, what now? He asked. Do we just sit here pretending we're okay? Emily met his gaze. Maybe we stop pretending, she said softly. He tilted his head, studying her face, searching for something he wasn't sure he'd find. You really mean that? Yes, she said, her voice trembling, but sure. I've spent so long acting like I don't care. But I do, and I think part of me always will. He didn't respond right away. He just reached for the bill lying on the table. But before he could pick it up, Emily leaned forward and grabbed it first. Their hands met fully this time. Warm skin against warm skin. Neither moved. It was the kind of touch that said everything words couldn't. Ryan's eyes lifted slowly to hers. Emily, he said, voice low and rough, stop pretending. The sound of his voice saying her name like that, soft, almost pleading, made her heart ache. She didn't pull her hand away. She didn't look down. She just sat there, holding his gaze, realizing how much truth sat behind that one sentence. For a long time, they didn't move. The cafe around them buzzed with quiet conversations, the smell of coffee and rain filling the air. But for Emily, it felt like the world had narrowed down to that single moment, the touch of his hand, the look in his eyes, the memory of everything they once were. Finally, he released her hand and stood up. Come on, he said gently. Let's get out of here. She looked up, confused. Where? Anywhere but here, he said with a small, sad smile. Some place where we don't have to keep pretending everything's fine. Emily hesitated, then nodded. For the first time in months, she felt a flicker of something real. Not hope exactly, but a chance. A small, fragile chance that maybe this wasn't the end after all. She grabbed her coat and followed him toward the door, and as they stepped into the soft drizzle, the rain felt different, lighter, freer, like it wasn't washing things away this time, but clearing the air for something new. And though neither of them said a word, both knew something had shifted. They weren't just two people trying to make peace with the past anymore. They were two hearts learning how to stop pretending and maybe, just maybe, finding their way back to each other again. The rain had stopped, leaving the streets damp and glowing under the soft orange lights of Portland's late evening. Emily and Ryan walked side by side in silence, the sound of their footsteps filling the quiet. The cafe was only a block behind them, but it already felt like another lifetime. Neither of them knew where they were going, only that neither wanted to say goodbye just yet. Ryan's hands were in his pockets, his shoulders slightly tense. Emily kept glancing at him, searching for some sign of what he was thinking. Finally, she broke the silence. "You didn't have to come with me," she said softly. He gave a faint smile. "You didn't have to call me either." That made her laugh quietly, the first real laugh between them all night. Touché. They stopped near a small park where the benches glistened from the rain and the trees dripped softly onto the ground. Ryan sat down on a bench, motioning for her to do the same. She hesitated, then joined him. Sitting just far enough to feel the space between them, the same invisible space that had followed them since their breakup for a while. Neither spoke. The only sound was the faint hiss of cars passing by. Then Ryan said, "You said you left because you lost yourself. I get that. But you never told me what that really meant." Emily looked down, her hands folded in her lap. "It wasn't about you," she said. "Not really. It was me. I didn't know how to be in love and still be myself. Everything became about us, our plans, our dreams, our future. Somewhere along the way, I forgot what I wanted." He nodded slowly, staring ahead. "I guess I didn't make it easy for you either. I kept thinking if I loved you enough, you'd stay happy. But maybe I was just trying to control things I didn't understand." She turned to him. "You didn't do anything wrong, Ryan. You were good to me. Too good, maybe. That's what scared me." He raised an eyebrow. "Scared you?" "Yes," she said, voice trembling slightly. "Because it felt too real. I thought love was supposed to be simple, but it wasn't. It was. Like I couldn't breathe without worrying about what would happen if it fell apart." He looked at her with soft eyes. "But it did fall apart." "I know," she whispered, "and I'm still here trying to figure out why it hurts so much." Ryan leaned forward, elbows on his knees, staring at the wet ground. "You think I didn't feel that?" He said quietly. "After you left, everything felt off. I'd wake up and reach for you, forgetting you weren't there anymore. I'd go to the grocery store and buy the coffee you liked without realizing it. You were everywhere, even when you were gone." Emily swallowed hard. "I used to walk by your apartment sometimes," she confessed, "just to see if the lights were on. Just to remind myself you were still out there somewhere." He turned his head, surprise flickering in his eyes. "You did?" She nodded. "Yeah. I'd tell myself I was over you. But then I'd see your car or hear your favorite song, and it would start all over again." Ryan exhaled slowly. "I wish you'd told me that sooner." "Didn't know how," she said. "I thought I'd already hurt you enough." He leaned back, staring up at the gray sky. "You did hurt me, Emily. But not because you left. Because you didn't trust me enough to tell me the truth. I could have handled it. I would have fought for us if you'd let me." Her eyes filled with tears. "I know. And that's what makes it harder. You always would have fought for me. But back then, I didn't know how to fight for myself." For a moment, neither of them said anything. The world around them seemed to pause, the air cool and quiet. The rain fading into memory. Finally, Emily looked up at him, her voice barely a whisper. "You said I was pretending earlier." "You were right." He glanced at her. "Pretending what?" "Pretending I moved on. Pretending I didn't still think about you every single day." Ryan's expression softened, and his voice dropped to almost a whisper. "Then stop pretending now." She met his eyes, her heart pounding. "And if I do?" He hesitated, then said, "Then maybe we finally stop lying to ourselves about what we really want." Emily didn't know what to say. All she could think about was how close he was, how familiar he still felt even after all this time. She wanted to reach for him, but didn't. Not yet. Instead, she said quietly, "You know what's funny? I came here today thinking I just wanted closure. But now I don't even know what that means anymore." Ryan smiled faintly. "Maybe closure isn't something you find. Maybe it's just something you decide to stop chasing. His words hit her like truth she'd been avoiding. She looked away, blinking back tears. "You always had a way of saying things that make me stop breathing. Still do, apparently," he said gently. That made her laugh again, soft, shaky, but real. "You haven't changed much. Neither have you," he said. "You still bite your lip when you're nervous." She smiled. "And you still notice everything." Ryan leaned a little closer, his tone serious now. "I notice you, Emily, always have." Her breath caught. She wanted to speak but couldn't. The words were too heavy, too full. The air between them felt charged, like the world had gone still just for them. After a long moment, she finally said, "So what happens now?" He shrugged slightly, his voice calm. "Maybe nothing. Maybe everything. I don't know. But I do know one thing. I don't want to keep pretending you don't matter to me." Emily's throat tightened. "And I don't want to keep pretending I don't still love you," she said. Her voice trembling. The words hung in the air, fragile and powerful all at once. Ryan didn't move for a moment. Then, slowly, he reached out and took her hand. His touch was gentle, steady, not demanding, not desperate, just there. He didn't speak right away. When he finally did, his voice was soft. "I don't know what we are now, Emily, but maybe we can stop running from it." She nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. "Maybe we can just start from where we are." He squeezed her hand lightly. "That's a good place to start." The sound of distant thunder rolled through the night, low and steady. Emily looked up at the sky, feeling something she hadn't in a long time: peace. Not because everything was fixed, but because, for once, the truth was out in the open. They sat there in silence, their hands still joined, letting the night settle around them. The pain was still there, the memories still sharp. But the weight between them felt lighter somehow. It wasn't a perfect moment. It wasn't even simple. But it was real. And for Emily, that was enough. Because sometimes love doesn't end. It just hides, waiting for the right moment to step back into the light. The city was quiet that night, wrapped in a soft drizzle that blurred the lights into gold streaks on the pavement. Emily and Ryan walked side by side, not speaking, just listening to the rhythm of their steps and the faint hum of passing cars. The air smelled like rain and cold coffee, and for the first time in a long while, Emily didn't feel like running from the silence. It felt safe now, honest. They stopped at a corner where a flickering streetlight reflected off puddles. Ryan tilted his head toward her, his expression calm but unreadable. "You ever think about what could have been?" he asked, his voice steady but soft, like he already knew her answer. Emily looked at him, her heart tightening. "Every day," she said simply. He nodded, looking down at the ground for a moment before glancing back at her. "Me too." The words lingered between them. The sound of distant music drifted out of a nearby cafe, something slow and familiar. A breeze swept by, and Emily shivered slightly. Without thinking, Ryan reached over and adjusted her coat collar, his fingers brushing her neck. The touch was small, but it made her freeze, not from cold, but from the warmth it carried. Their eyes met. For a second, the rest of the world faded away. Ryan's voice dropped to a whisper. "Stop pretending." Wasn't sharp or demanding, just quiet, almost tender. But it hit Emily harder than anything he'd said before. She wanted to answer, to tell him she wasn't pretending anymore. But her throat tightened. She had spent months pretending to be fine, pretending she'd moved on, pretending the ache in her chest was gone. But here in front of him, all of that fell apart. She took a slow breath. "I'm not pretending," she said softly, but her voice trembled. He looked at her, eyes steady. "You are. You always do it when you're scared." Eyes stung with tears. "Then maybe I am scared," she admitted. "Scared that if I stop pretending, I'll want everything back. And I don't know if we can survive that again." Ryan exhaled, his tone gentle. "Maybe we don't have to go back. Maybe we just start from now." Emily looked at him, searching for any hint of uncertainty, but all she saw was quiet truth. For a moment, She remembered the way things used to be, lazy Sunday mornings. Laughter over burnt pancakes, late night talks about nothing. But she also remembered the nights she cried alone. The silence that stretched between them, the fear that love wasn't enough. And yet, standing there now, Kay, all she wanted was to believe that maybe love could still mean something, Kay, even after the breaking. "I don't know how to start over," she whispered. Ryan smiled faintly. "We don't have to figure it out right now." He reached for her hand, slow, deliberate, and when his fingers touched hers, she didn't pull away. His hand was warm, grounding, familiar. She felt the pulse beneath his skin and realized how alive everything suddenly felt again. They began walking again, their joined hands swinging lightly between them. The rain was fading, replaced by the smell of wet earth and the quiet hum of streetlights. The world around them seemed to breathe with them, calm, steady, waiting. As they crossed the bridge, Emily glanced sideways at him. "Do you ever wish things had been different?" He shook his head. "No, I think we needed to fall apart to understand what we had. Sometimes love isn't about staying. It's about learning why it's worth coming back." His words sank deep, settling somewhere inside her where fear used to live. She smiled, faint but real. "You always did know how to say the right thing." Ryan laughed quietly. "No, I just learned to stop saying the wrong ones." They reached the middle of the bridge, where the water below shimmered with reflections of city lights. Emily leaned on the railing, watching raindrops ripple across the surface. The world felt softer somehow, like it was forgiving. Ryan stood beside her, his hands in his pockets. "You know," he said, "I thought I'd moved on. I told myself I was done looking back. But tonight, I realized something. I never really stopped waiting for you to walk back into my life." She turned to him, surprised. "You were waiting?" He nodded. "Not in a way that stopped me from living. But I never stopped hoping we'd find our way back, even if it was just to say what we never could before." Emily's heart felt full and heavy all at once. "And what if we still can't figure it out?" "Then at least we'll know we tried." He said. The simplicity of it made her smile through her tears. "You make it sound easy. It's not," he admitted. "But it's real. And I'll take real over perfect any day." For a long moment they just stood there, two people who had once broken apart but somehow ended up back in the same place. Not by chance, but by something quieter, deeper. Emily took a slow breath, her voice steady now. "You're right. I've been pretending. Pretending I was fine. Pretending I didn't miss you. But I'm tired, Ryan. I'm tired of pretending." He turned to face her fully, his expression soft but certain. "Then don't." She met his eyes. "What if I can't do this again?" "Then we don't," he said. "We just walk, talk, exist. One moment at a time." Something about the simplicity of that broke the last bit of distance between them. She stepped closer, close enough to feel his breath, the warmth of him cutting through the cold air. Neither moved for a moment. Then Ryan reached up and gently brushed a raindrop from her cheek. Or maybe it was a tear. Their eyes locked again. And she knew, without words, without promises, that they had both changed. Maybe love wasn't about staying together through everything. Maybe it was about finding each other again when the world made sense once more. Ryan smiled softly. "You look like you want to say something." Emily shook her head. "No," she whispered. "I just want to remember this." He nodded, understanding without asking. They stood there under the flickering light, hands still linked, watching the rain fade into mist. The city around them moved on, cars passing, people laughing somewhere in the distance. But for them, time seemed to pause. No grand declarations. No promises of forever. Just the quiet truth that something between them was still alive as they began walking again. Ryan glanced over and said, almost teasingly, "So, are we done pretending?" Emily smiled, her heart lighter than it had been in years. "Completely," she said. He squeezed her hand. And for the first time in a long while, the silence between them didn't hurt. It felt like peace, the kind that comes when you stop fighting what your heart already knows. They kept walking down the empty street, the glow of the city fading behind them, their footsteps falling into rhythm. The night was calm now, the rain gone, leaving only the echo of something new, fragile, uncertain, but full of hope. And though neither said it aloud, both knew the truth. This wasn't the end of their story. It was the beginning of one they were finally brave enough to write together.